Welcome, petals. If your life revolves around flowers, this is the podcast for you.
I like to think of the soil as like a well-stocked pantry, and that's because there's a lot of stuff that's in the soil that's actually not readily available. And it reminds me at home here how we have to lock the biscuits away from the kids. And when we decide the kids need the biscuits, we'll make the biscuits available.
Before we dive in, we welcome Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers as our Season 3 sponsor. Blooming in New Zealand since 1992, they're a vibrant modern wholesale business, bringing premium hand-selected blooms to florists and retailers nationwide. Hello petals, and welcome back to Flower Farming in New Zealand podcast. Today I'm delighted to talk dirty, not smut, you people, soil dirty. I'm chatting with Nicky, the owner of Crop, a flower farm which is beautifully nestled in the sun-kissed hills surrounding Raglan. Crop started in 2018 and is made up of a boutique, a flower farm and a food florist. With tightly managed growing space and a ruthless focus on quality, Nicky is always pushing the boundaries of what's possible in just 700 square metres. Of huge interest to many flower farmers who actively work to improve their soil, Nicky also recently launched a soil consultancy in collaboration with a soil scientist. She is now on a mission to help flower farmers and other small growers improve their soil and realise the full growing potential of their own unique growing space. Welcome, Nicky. It's fantastic to have you here.
Oh, good morning, Jo. Thanks for such a lovely introduction. And hello to all you petals. I love how you call your listeners petals. Always makes me smile.
It's what we are. We're all petal lovers. Tell us, Nicky, what were you doing before growing flowers and running your food forest became your life?
Well, actually, I'm quite lucky to say I've managed to do that whole corporate shift. I was working in a London PR agency, managing a group of 5 individuals and wearing killer heels every day. And for those of you who are watching, Jo, I actually brought you an example of a heel. Look at those babies.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah, they're very high for anyone who's listening in. But
I'd need a ladder to get in those.
It's hysterical. They're actually quite comfortable.
Liar.
But anyway, that's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, I was in the technology industry, working for clients like Samsung and Facebook and Microsoft and doing these multinational corporate pushes all over Europe. But I kind of always knew I wanted to get my fingernails grubby. That was the bit in the back of my head. How do I get my fingernails grubby? And we had this opportunity to immigrate to New Zealand. And when I got here, I was just on a mission to try and find some kind of business I could get involved in. And I never for once thought I'd own my own company. I just wanted to work for someone else who was doing something outside. And there was a company here called Raglan Floral Company. I basically really threw myself at a crystal trying to get hired. And they said, look, we can't take on any more head count, sensibly, but would you like to grow flowers? And I immediately lapped up the opportunity and then fell into despair thinking, how am I going to do this? I have no idea how to grow flowers. I've completely overstated my skills. And I was really, really nervous. But it just shows you the importance of having a good mentor, because Crystal arrived at my house with this massive piece of black landscape fabric and just said, right, where do you want this flower farm? And we just said, okay, follow the workshop, and we pinned it down. And she bought a cloche with a whole bunch of trays and showed me how to sow seeds and a sack of revolting looking things and a pair of secateurs. And I just was winging it, thinking I'll have to work out what those are. And they were dahlia tubers that I had to divide. So yeah, that's my entrance into flower farming, crash and burn, basically.
But how unique to have such a mentor, and basically you had a business plan before you even thought that you were going to have a business. They had worked out what would work for them. It's a pretty unique situation, Nicky, isn't it?
Yeah, so fortunate. When I started, it was 10 beds of 4 meters each in length and 1.1 meters wide. That's what I started with, and I did that for a year. But even when I was doing that specific a small space, I landed up with a lot of surplus product. And I remember the day when Crystal said, we can't actually take all of this. You'll have to sell into Hamilton. And I was like, oh, how am I going to do that? I don't know anybody in Hamilton. So yeah, when I think back now, and I'm now in my 9th season, I can still feel those feelings of anguish of, how do I expand this?
Total anxiety. I've gone to so much effort to grow this. Where am I going to sell it? How am I going to sell it? Because that takes so much time, doesn't it?
Totally. I've got such a small place, and if I'm throwing away any stems, it causes me anguish. Even though I know those stems are going in the compost and eventually will be feeding all the microbes, it still feels like waste to me.
But yeah, because it's kind of that balance, microbe versus dollars. And
yes.
We've got to have enough dollars to be able to keep doing what we're doing. So I understand exactly where you're coming from with that. It's just that battle of having enough and having the sales channels to sell what you have, isn't it? It's a constant curve.
Over the years, I've just made slight iterations every year on if I see something feels difficult or is not working how I feel is the most productive, it just gets axed. I'm pretty ruthless around here because I've got a small plot, at, as you say, 700 square meters. That's not even growing space, that's area. So it's much smaller. And so I'm just really focused on trying to get the most out of a small space instead of spreading myself over a huge area and then trying to make that work, basically.
So has your business vision actually changed then? Are you still just selling to that florist, or have you spread your sales channels into other areas?
In terms of my vision, I've always wanted to connect individuals to their local growing communities and have them experience like the awesomeness of New Zealand product. That's my main focus. And for me, my main channels are wholesale through direct sales to florists. And then I've got my soil consultancy and I do the dahlia tubers. In terms of the wholesale stuff, there's 5 florists in Raglan, which is nuts for a small community.
What's the population of Raglan, roughly?
Next question. I don't know. Much smaller than Hamilton. Like, it's tiny. We don't even have a traffic light here. And it really drops in winter, but I don't actually know the numbers.
We're sort of going off track as we normally do in this podcast, but do you think that having 5 florists in such a small town is sustainable?
Well, I have thought about this, and have I made more money with those 5 florists, or have I just split my work between 5 florists? You know, or each of those florists actually selling less and I'm just selling the same amount. And I've done some numbers on that, and I have grown my revenue through supplying more. I say 5, but I'm actually only supplying 4 because I don't supply 1 anymore. Raglan is a special place and we're quite fortunate. It's a big wedding destination, so there's always the need. There's a lot of events that happen here. There's a lot of quite swanky apartments where people want flowers in their Airbnb. So the florists are busy, which is great. Lucky.
It's fantastic, isn't it? So coming back to your farm, would you describe your farm as organic, regenerative, or environmentally aware? How would you describe it?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I would describe it as any of those, actually, although I'm probably the closest to regenerative. I want to leave the land in a better space than how I found it. But, you know, there's so many parts of regenerative farming that I don't do. You know, the animals, I don't use electric vehicles, you know, solar, all that kind of stuff. I feel I'm on a path. It's steps, but I would say that's probably the closest as to where I am. There's no chemical inputs here. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm organic because I'm not certified, but I do use all natural processes. And I think also being a small grower, there's only so many things you can do. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. You know, are animals going to make sense in my plot? Probably not. I need that bed space. I don't have the luxury of, you know, using animals in certain areas.
How would you describe the soil type on your farm?
Very lucky. I've got a loamy soil, which is infused with volcanic ash from our local moanga karioi. So I have tilled once here, and that was when we started. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's a really dark color. And there were loads of earthworms in it. So I'm starting from a good place. Although some parts of the property have a very hard clay barrier.
pan underneath the
A
soil.
pan. Yeah, that's the word.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you arrived and when you started your farm, there was this beautiful soil with worms in it. But did that make you realise straight away that soil health is so important to growing healthy flowers, or is that something you've just learned as you progressed through the 9 years of growing?
It was way before crop. I learned about soil. So my first Instagram post on crop and it all starts with the soil. And it's a picture. Yeah, it's a picture
Yeah.
or a video, I think, of my compost heap. So
Hmm.
that was even before the flowers.
Yep.
But I used to live in London and I lived right in the middle of the city with this beautiful roof terrace, which I spent ages turning into this amazing tropical garden. And anybody who's done container gardening knows it is an absolute mission. You have to
Absolute
be
mission.
super on it.
Yeah.
And I just noticed with dismay how the lupins got absolutely sabotaged by these crawly insects, which I now know are aphids. At the same time, I was very lucky to do a course with a chap called Mike Jackson, who was the head horticulturalist at Kew Gardens. And it was a
Wow.
fabulous course, really wonderful. It was on my maternity leave. And he got me absolutely fascinated by pests and diseases. That was his thing. And I remember sitting in one of his lectures where he was talking about aphids, and he was talking about how they can telescope generations. So an aphid gives birth to a pregnant aphid.
Yeah.
I mean, how awesome is that?
No, it's not. It's a pain in the neck. How
You
dare
want to
they?
give it to these creatures. I think that's incredible. So the grandmother already contains a daughter aphid who already contains the granddaughter aphid. And so when I heard that and remembered these poor lupins on the roof terrace, and just from observation, looking at that soil and this just lifeless medium that those plants were growing in, I was thinking, like, these plants need more than just them. They need help in the whole system. And that's really what led me to soil and my fascination of it.
That's a really interesting observation. If you take the time to look at what your plants are living in and you can see that they're not getting what they need, you've got two options, really, isn't it? You add something to the soil or you add something above the ground. And your instinct was to go below ground, which I think is the right instinct. Healthy soil, healthy plants.
Absolutely. And it's a little bit, I don't know if any of your listeners have ever gone scuba diving, but when you actually get down to depth and you are down there, you think, wow, this is unbelievable. I just want to tell everybody about this. It's such a beautiful world. And it is a completely different world. And the more you get into soil, the more you realize, wow, this is more than a bustling city. This is just neighborhood upon neighborhood upon neighborhood of bustling cities. It's really quite fascinating.
And I love your analogy of the soil being like diving. I'm not a diver, but it makes sense to me that what you see under the water, you have to think about that when you're looking under the soil as well.
That's absolutely right. I like to also think of the soil as like a well-stocked pantry. You
Yeah.
often hear people talk about soil being food, but I actually think it's beyond that. It's a well-stocked pantry, and that's because there's a lot of stuff that's in the soil that's actually not readily available. And it reminds me at home here how we have to lock the biscuits away from the kids. And when we decide the kids need the biscuits, we'll make the biscuits available. And that's pretty much the same thing. So if food's your thing, that's another analogy.
It's a great analogy. How would you describe healthy soil to someone who's never thought about it before?
Very simply, it's a living thing. About 50% is made up of minerals, and that's what you always hear, the NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and a whole bunch of other minerals. And the other 50% is basically air, water, organic matter, so that could be compost or decaying leaves or roots, and crucially, these living microorganisms. And that together makes a very healthy living soil. I actually heard a fact the other day which blew my socks off, which is that 1 in 4 species lives under our feet. So that's a quarter of the Earth's biodiversity is in the soil. I mean, what an opportunity. If you can work out how to work with that, that's great.
It blows me away, Nicky.
Yeah, 1 in 4 species lives in the soil. Isn't that amazing? And we don't know anything about it. We know more about space than we do about
Yeah.
soil. I feel like it's just coming public. Well, you've got those really cool movies coming out. The YouTube and videos are making a lot of things much more accessible. There's some actually really good books. So yeah, it's getting there, getting more.
Do you want to recommend a book or two for someone who would be interested in following up with that?
Teaming with Microbes is a really great one. Actually, I can't remember the guy's name, but it's based on the foundations of the Soil Food Web, which came from Elaine Ingham, which is one of my mentors. Yeah, she's fantastic. And actually listening to a lot of her talks on YouTube, there's a lot of free talks. I would really recommend that.
That's something that we can add to the show notes, a couple of titles of books or YouTube channels, podcasts, whatever, that would be good basic knowledge, so that people can start from scratch if they want to. So just go to the show note and we'll find that info. Have you noticed a difference in your flowers since you've started paying more attention to your soil?
It's not that I've been paying more attention to my soil, because I've always been interested in the soil. It's paying different attention to my soil.
Explain.
It's a really key, subtle difference, because paying more attention means I'm focusing more on the soil, but I've always put a lot of energy into the soil. I just feel like I've put the wrong energy. I've been doing unnecessary things just because I didn't know any better. But coming back to your question, I see a huge difference. I think the main things are 100% less pest pressure.
That's really interesting.
I remember starting out and sending photos to Daryl at Mangrove Creek saying, "What's wrong with my echinops? What's going on here?" And him coming back saying, "Oh, that's aphids, 100%. Going down the whole bioforce route. And I just don't see any aphid infestations at all anymore. Do get thrips now and then, but it's not enough to do anything about. I don't even spray for it, or they just kind of go, and they're never that much.
Not even in your dahlias?
No. I do see some things come through, but it's almost like they just kind of move on. And I know that because I have had less time in the flower farm, and I think, must get on top of that. And then when I go to do something, it's gone. I'm like, oh, right. And I made that observation last year. And so this past season, I have purposefully not done anything, and it hasn't got worse, and the cycle just seems to sort itself out. And that's such a huge savings of time on my side, which I'm eternally grateful for. The biggest issue I have is the fungal stuff on chrysanthemums still, but just got to get on top of the serenade.
Do you think the fungal issue on the chryses is because you live in Raglan more than anything else, just the moisture content that you have in autumn?
I'll take that, yep. Yeah. I'll blame the location.
Yeah, it wasn't anything I did.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a problem.
Where I've seen soil make a big difference is just the vibrancy of the plants, and just the colors and how strong everything feels. I've noticed that. And then how long everything lasts. And I guess that's just because the plant itself is healthier. They can sit there for a lot longer before I have to harvest them, which is great because you can space out your harvests more. That's been cool.
That is another one. So what are some of the things that you would do sort of on an everyday or every week basis that help you to look after your soil?
Very simply, always as a rule, try and make sure that there are living roots in the soil. And again, on a small plot, that is sometimes quite difficult to do because I don't have time to put in a green manure, let it grow, chop it down, let it sit before I have to flip the bed. So in those circumstances, I'm using mulch. It's just never have dry, bare soil, basically, is one of the main things. No digs. I'm always using a board fork. And then I always inoculate all my seedlings with superzyme and mycorrhizal fungi. Yes. Yeah. Yes, both those things without fail. I almost feel nervous putting seedlings in without that because I just know, and I've seen myself with a microscope, how different those environments can be with those products or without, or similar products. They don't have to be those exact products.
The mycorrhizal fungi, do you dip your seedlings in it? Is that how you do it?
It's a powder, and it has to sit on the roots. So again, I used to spray mycorrhizin thinking
Mm.
that is the same thing as mycorrhizal fungi, and it's vastly different. And it has to make contact with the roots. And so mycorrhizal fungi, I think lots of your listeners would have heard of that. And I like to think of those as little ladders on the roots. Because that's basically what they are.
Well,
They're
yeah.
extending the root system, and they are just maximizing your root ball, and they are going right deep. They're taking your roots right deep into the soil and being able to bring up lots of nutrients. So they allow much bigger nutrient uptake. What other things do I do? I would like to get a bit better at doing all the compost teas. That's a definite close future thing I'm going to be working on. I've actually just bought a massive IBC container, so I'm quite excited to get some big compost teas brewing. And I've been looking up, and you can aerate those with a spa pool filter.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so that's my next
A fish
challenge.
tank pump works too.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, although it would have to be quite a big one for the size of an IPC. But yeah, that definitely works. But I make mine in a concentrated bucket and then dilute it into the IPC because it's just way easier to handle. And then I can aerate it just manually if I want to, or we have got a fish pump. But I sort of stopped using that because it was easier just to, as I walked past, to aerate it. And then it's all filtered. Everything's filtered out before it goes to the IPC, which can then go into the irrigation lines and be fed there. But we know it's clean of detritus that isn't going to block the irrigation lines. Just different way of doing the same thing. So tell us, Nicky, what's one mistake you made with your soil that taught you an important lesson?
Wow. So I went to a food forest course at Kawanga Gardens with Kay Baxter, which was wonderful. And we were very lucky to be able to sit in on a soil test conversation she was having with Grant, the owner of environmental fertilizers. And she came up with this really good recipe for home gardeners and for growers of products which were environmental fertilizer products, Nature's Garden, Soil Force, which is basically biochar, and an RPR, like a rock phosphate, which is a lime product that's very easily absorbed by the soil and by the plants. And so I just indiscriminately used this formula on all my beds for years. And what I landed up doing was actually increasing the soil pH. And so you often hear about soil pH, and I think the key thing to know about soil pH is if it gets too high or too low, you land up locking up some of those really key nutrients, and that can be an issue. And so, yeah, I'd say that was my mistake, is just still doing good things, obviously adding all this mix of things is really good. But I have since found out that it's much better to just add exactly what your soil needs. And I know what my soil needs because I do soil tests every year.
Which is interesting, isn't it? If you do a soil test, you know what you need to do, or you will after you've been on Nicky's course, because you'll know how to read the soil. It's knowing how to interpret that test that tells you what to do next. You can't just look at the test and say, there's my NPK and a few other minerals or whatever you've asked them to test. You have to know what to do next. Would you agree with that one?
Oh, 100%. And with testing, there's some key things that you can immediately find out about your soil. And I would just really, really implore everybody to go out and get this, because if you just looked at your soil pH and you looked at your phosphorus level, those two things will significantly change the productivity of your farm and the health, and just so many things with those two things. And that's purely because, as I said, the pH can lock up nutrients, so it's really key to get that at the right level. If it gets too high, it locks up phosphorus, which is, I'm not quite
essential.
there yet, but I've actually locked up a little bit of my trace elements now because my pH has gone too high, and it's actually quite hard to bring pH down. So that's my thing I'm dealing with at the moment. But I know once I've got that, I'm sweet, and the other one is phosphorus. And people say, oh well, I'm just going to spray and I'll have the compost teas and everything will be good, but actually mycorrhizal fungi cannot operate when phosphorus is not at the right level. And not only mycorrhizal fungi, it's also quite a lot of the other microbes. So phosphorus is super key for microbial action and for everything else as well.
So that's the perfect time to take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk to Nicky about the workshop that she is running shortly, which is called what, Nicky?
Understanding your soil test.
We'll be back in one moment. Love the growing but over the constant hustle for buyers? Our partners at Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers can help with that. Juggling dozens of tiny retail accounts or losing your weekends selling at the local market takes time and energy. By partnering with Fresh Cut, you get instant access to florists and supermarkets nationwide. Selling wholesale means a reliable income, and the best part, you get your time back. Simplify your business and focus on what you do best, growing gorgeous blooms. There's excitement ahead with big ideas blooming, but why not visit Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers at wholesaleflowers.nz to see how easy it is to become a supplier. Fresh Cut, established in 1992, evolving for tomorrow. Now back to the show. We're back with Flower Farming in New Zealand podcast with Nicky from Crop Raglan, and we're talking soils. Now, get back into it. How long do you think it takes to build a really good soil?
Jo, I'm going to give you another analogy. I think it's a bit like a retirement fund. So, you know how they say, like early deposits, long-term gain. And I think the earlier you start, and if you put stuff in to your retirement fund, little by little, at the end, those small investments make a huge difference. And so it's exactly the same for soil. Microbial action can be seen in as little as 2 weeks, like significant, impactful microbial action. That's amazing. Like, how cool is soil?
Yeah.
That comes back to that 1 in 4 living organisms there. There's a lot of things down there working in your favor. Things like structure, that usually takes longer, and you'll be able to see differences usually within a year or two. Structure is a good thing we haven't really touched upon. I'd say that's really crucial to get that right. What I'm referring to is the sort of air in the soil and the good drainage. That's why earthworms are really important. They're like the engineers. They go through and make the little holes to just get the airflow flowing through that, through the structure of that soil. Yeah, so you really just get in. Don't get too overwhelmed with nutrients and all those things. Just there's a lot of things down there working hard to make this good for you.
If someone's trying to improve their soil, should they focus on the soil test results or the structure to start with?
I definitely think the structure, as much as I'd love to say the soil test, I think the structure. If you've got a waterlogged soil, no amount of nutrients or microorganisms is going to fix that. You need to make sure the drainage is sorted out. In fact, there's really simple things you can do. You can redirect water flows. I've had to do that because I actually work on a slope here. So I've had to rechannel water flows, and that's made a big difference. Biochar are wonderful. I listened to your chat with Matt from Carbon Options. Yeah, what a guy. Yeah. And I found myself nodding at several places, but I used biochar a lot when I started, and I mentioned some clay areas that I have, and that really did change the structure of those clay areas. So, yeah, get biochar on there. But then, they kind of work hand in hand. And as I said, you've got to start somewhere. And if you're doing all those changes to your soil structure, but then your pH is out of whack, then you're doing this work for nothing. So really, you should just do them together.
That's a really good point, actually. Our structure is obviously very different from yours. Ours is what we call a bony soil. It's absolutely full of stone, and it's so free draining. It's almost impossible to keep things wet.
Do you use biochar?
I haven't used biochar, and I should use biochar, but it's actually really expensive to get it here, just the freighting of it. We're on 20 acres here. That's a lot of biochar, but I could easily add it to one block and see what difference it made, and I should do that. You're giving me a kick in the butt, and I will do that.
I would recommend it just with very free draining soils. Biochar really has an unbelievable capacity to hold on to water, and also it's not something you have to keep reapplying, and I don't think a lot of people know that. It's a way of fixing carbon in your soil, so you don't have to keep putting it on the beds. So it's almost a now and then investment. You don't have to be doing this every season.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit more palatable. But you must make sure you inoculate it, because if you don't, it's a bit like putting mulch on your beds. When biochar breaks down, it's just going to suck all those nutrients out your bed, and that's exactly what you don't want. So it must be charged so that it doesn't do that.
So, and when you say charged, what are you charging it with?
A compost tea, that would be the best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
the
that
easiest.
makes sense. And that's what Matt was saying when I interviewed him. He was doing one tea that was infused with horse manure and another one that,
Seaweed.
now I can't remember, seaweed, thank you.
Don't have to overcomplicate it. Like if you could get that product,
Mm,
you could get your compost tea on it to inoculate it if it's not, and then you don't need a lot of it either, which is it's a phenomenal product. It would be great if you could do it in a test bed.
yeah,
I would
I will
I
do.
would really recommend that, and also a soil test. But I would imagine you do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we do. But I will say we don't get help interpreting our soil tests, and that's what we need to change, because it's interesting to get somebody else's view. Otherwise, you become one-eyed and you only look at one part of the soil test and you forget that this is a whole food web, as you keep saying, and we just have to think about the whole of the soil underneath us, not just one part of it. I
That's
think
right.
that's
And
important.
that's exactly why I've started the soil consultancy. It's just out of pure frustration of getting soil tests and then trying to get these things interpreted. I think if you're a big farm, you have access into agronomists, soil guys who can obviously analyze those tests and recommend, but it's usually recommendations based on fertilizing products. So they are
Yeah.
slightly biased and it's for a particular mindset. Whereas a lot of the smaller growers include some of the larger commercial growers, they are more regenerative and organic, and
Yeah.
we want to use what resources we have around us. And so I partnered with a soil scientist that I know, and we set up this soil consultancy, and it's been awesome. It's been such a cool journey, and I'm learning heaps.
Yeah. So the workshop that you're running in a couple of weeks, is that purely for flower farmers, or is that for anyone who's interested in soil health?
It's the latter. Last year we had someone who had a food forest, we had an orchard owner, someone who had a home garden, we had flower farmers. This year I've got a landscape gardener coming, and also lots of flower farmers. So basically, if you've got soil and you grow in it, this is for you.
And I'll do a little dig here. Would you please sell it online? Record it and sell it online for those of us who can't get there, because I'm really fascinated by the whole concept and I really want to listen to Jake. I think that there's a lot of people out there who would be prepared to pay for that information if you can work out how to do it. There you go.
All right. Thanks. Thank you, Joan. We are looking into that. Actually, parallel to the workshop, which is running at the end of August on the 29th, we also have a soil consultancy. So right now you could buy a soil test through us, or you could buy a soil test and analysis of that soil test through us. So Jake and I will come on a call with you, and you talk you through your soil test and explain to you what your soil needs and how you can amend it, and crucially where you can get these amendments from, because that's another bit that I've really struggled with. And I think that's why it works quite well with Jake and I, because he's just he's a fantastic guy. He used to work at environmental fertilizers, and I hunted him down. I literally stalked the guy. I completely stalked him to find him, because I was devastated when he left. And when I found him, amazingly, he lives quite close to me. He's half an hour away, and he's a great guy.
He's probably terrified of you now.
Probably.
He's terrified of opening his curtains in the morning, and here's Nicky with a handful of dirt in her hand saying, "Jake, help me."
When I asked him if he would get involved in a soil workshop, I think he didn't think I'd ever do it. So he was like, "Yeah, that sounds cool." And then, no, he's fully involved in the soil consultancy and everything.
Well done, Jake.
Yeah. He's just this absolute wealth of knowledge. But then also I've still got my head on, which is how I was feeling before I knew a lot about soil testing. I can sort of pull him back and say, but how would this work for an organic grower? Or how do I actually apply this? Or why is this happening? And so it's quite a good mix that the two of us have.
So what would be the main takeaways, the main bits of information that people would get from being at the workshop?
I think the main thing is that every person will leave with a individualized plan for their own plot based on their soil test of what they need to do now and where to amend things to increase the productivity in their farm. So that would be the one thing. But we also look at soil tests and what red flags should be jumping out at you when you look at your soil test. What does it mean? So we go through that, and we go through my soil tests through the past 3-4 years. So you can see how my soil has changed. with the recommendations that have been supplied. And we also look at, what nutrients make up a plant. And if you're lacking a nutrient or it's locked up, what can you do to amend that? And those amendments can be organic or inorganic, but we specifically look at organic amendments. So if you're low in nitrogen or high in phosphorus, what can you do naturally to remedy that on your farm? And we go into quite a big discussion about organic and inorganic and what that actually means.
Just because that's what we all get fussed about. Yeah.
And there's just really cool stuff like if you're looking at a plant, how can you tell that something that's happening in the leaves, what mineral deficiency is that?
Yeah.
So we do tissue assessments and we look at what nutrients are locked up at various levels with varying pH levels. Lots of stuff.
That's so much information.
Yeah, it's a whole day and it's pretty good value. And Jake brings these really cool instruments and just shows how you can look at energy levels in the soil and lots of cool things.
I am completely jealous. I will say that. I think it's exactly what flower farmers need, particularly someone who's new to growing. I just think that's so important. And I shouldn't say flower farmers because it doesn't matter what you're using your soil for, knowing how to make the most of the soil is what you're trying to achieve with the whole workshop, isn't it?
Yep, 100%. And of course, there's the other benefits of just meeting other growers and hearing their stories and learning through their soil tests.
Yeah.
Will you leave knowing exactly how to read a soil test? Probably not. Soil's a little bit like parenting. There's so many different views and it's so huge. But, you will be way better equipped to have a look at a test and know what does not look right. And also, you'll have a plan. You'll have a plan to better your crops. So I feel like that's quite worthwhile.
Is the workshop full? And if not, how do people book on that workshop?
It's nearly full, but you can still book via my website, which if you go to the workshops page at Crop Raglan or just Google Soil Workshop Raglan and it'll come up.
We'll put a link in the show notes. Make it easy for people so that they can get there. Now, a couple of quick fire questions for you just for fun. Yeah?
Ooh, I'm ready.
You ready?
Go.
On your What's the best investment you've made that's improved your soil?
Jake, my soil scientist. Yeah, he's been great. Yeah, and soil tests in the years, for sure.
That's cool. Have you ever had a soil test reveal something that really surprised you?
Yes. In fact, I had high levels of sodium, which I was flabbergasted by because that normally only happens if you've got poor drainage or if you're not using a natural water supply or if you're on a dairy farm where there's a lot of wash off. So I worked with Grant from Environmental Fertilizers and it turned out to be a mistake with their soil probe. Yeah. That was on a Reams test. So they retested and then it was normal. But I've also been shocked with very low, right in the beginning with a Hills test, very low phosphorus and low pH, which a lot of New Zealand soils actually have because we are more acidic based.
If there was that one book or podcast or YouTube channel that you could recommend, or one that's influenced you the most, would you still say Dr. Elaine Ingham, or do you think there are others that would be useful for people?
For me personally, it's Dr. Elaine Ingham. I am a bit of a soil geek and I just love how enthusiastic she gets when she's in her lectures. Yeah, when she gets really deep and granular and I enjoy learning from her. I'm such a geek. I do have a life.
Yeah, it's outside under your feet, but you have a life.
Yeah, true.
That's fine. Final question for you. What's one simple change any flower farmer or home gardener could make this spring to improve their soil?
For me, I think it's the pH. I think that's the key thing. Or biochar. I know we've repeated
I thought you might
things.
say biochar.
So that and phosphorus. I think those are the magic three for me. Oh, there's so many. As I'm saying them, I can think of a million more things. But if you zoom out of soil, I would say for any new grower or any existing grower, the thing that's really made a difference in my business is it energizing? So that's the lens I operate within. If I'm cutting a crop and I think cornflower, you're driving me crazy, I stop growing it. And it's a really lovely lens. I read a book, Marie Kondo, The Ever-Changing Habits of Being Tidy or something like that. But she talks about when you're tidying up, you should pick up each object and you should ask, does it spark joy? And I feel like that's the same thing in flower farming. Like for me, Is it energizing? And if it's not, I just don't do it. And I think that's why I'm still here.
You have the energy to keep going. Nicky, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. You're a mine of information. As I said, I do wish that you would put your soil workshop online in some format or another. But in the meantime, it's been fantastic talking to you.
Thank you, Joe. It's been a pleasure.
To stay in the loop, follow Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers on Instagram. Even with big changes coming to their website, their Insta feed is a place for behind-the-scenes looks and a sneak peek of what's blooming next. Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers, established in 1992, evolving for tomorrow. That's it for this episode, Petals. I'm Jo Robinson and I'm signing off until next time, knowing that if we work together, we'll keep the New Zealand floral industry growing and flourishing.